everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. For come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to the anniversary festivities, where we're kicking off this week with our annual tradition of talking K-State football recruiting, as we did in our first 2.5 hour long episode, which I don't recommend anyone listen to. But for this one, we have one of the best voices generally in terms of all K-State recruiting, but especially K-State football recruiting. The writer, my personal favorite writer from the K-State online staff, unless another one of them comes onto the show, then it would be actually a fight. But it is Drew Galloway. You know him, you love him. How are you doing today, Drew?
Good. Feels like it's been a crazy day for a Friday as we record this on a Friday. It just feels like my phone has just been constantly blowing up every 2 minutes. So it's been a lot of fun. This is the best time of the year, and it's a busy time of the year, but been a lot of fun. So excited to kind of get this draft going because I think that we're going to surprise a lot of people with our picks.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, especially. And you mentioned that it's busy with camp season coming on, but that's for subscribers of KSO. So we're going to change up the format from what we've done previous years, where last year Connor and I just went through our own personal boards and talked about them. This year we're doing a draft format. It's not a snake draft, and as the guest, Drew Galloway gets the number 1 overall pick. But we're going to firstly go through the high school board and then transfers, where Connor will actually get the first overall pick there. But Drew, you've been on the clock since I think Tuesday of this last week.
I think it was Monday, Tuesday, somewhere in there.
So you've been on the clock, and you and I had a discussion about this where, there were 3 names that I would consider if I was 101. So I'm really curious to hear who's going 101 in the inaugural K-State high school draft.
Yeah, I think there was probably 2 or 3 names that I really considered, but ultimately, because I'm not here to mess around, like the NFL and the NBA, they're like, oh, you have to take all 8 minutes, 10 minutes of your time. I'm just going to go right away. And my 101 is going to be Gus Hawkins from Mill Valley. I think that he has an extremely, extremely high ceiling. He's already up to 290 pounds right now and looked great at the camp yesterday when he was just hanging out, and still looks like he could gain another 15, 20 pounds easily. And I could see him being a future 2-3 year starter on K-State's offensive line, and was one of the best kids that I saw during the fall as well. So kind of leads me to picking Gus, and, on 3 loves Gus, number 52 player in the country, number 6 offensive tackle, and number 1 player in the state of Kansas. So you can't go wrong with Gus Hawkins, I don't think.
Yeah, towing the company line by saying on 3 loves him. But yeah, I would. Here's a question for you, because Connor and I have had this debate between one another, between this and the other top tackle. Which spot do you project Gus as playing? Do you project him as a left or right?
That's tough, and especially because I think that they could both play either, but I think that I would have Gus as left tackle. I just think that his footwork is probably a little bit further along than Caden Massey. So I think that he's probably more of a left tackle and Massey probably more on the right side, but I could also be totally wrong, and they show up first day of fall camp and they're flipped.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gus was my 101 as well on my board. He's somebody that I've really sensed the moment he committed and I watched his film, I've absolutely loved him. And for a long time, I felt like he was really underrated. And then just out of nowhere, he gets that 96 4-star grade from on 3 that I was very happy to see, because I love Gus as a prospect. But yeah, that was it. We have the same idea with Gus probably ending up at left. That's where I've always been with him. I don't know why. I don't have any specific reason for it. But I mean, between Gus and a couple other people, there's definitely a couple of really good options for the 101. But I think Gus probably deserves it the most.
Yeah. There's been some years where I think that the 101 is probably a little bit more obvious, but this year I feel like it was really a debate. like obviously 23, you knew who would be like the number one. So this one was fun to really kind of think about and kind of really project, because this one I think is more projection and kind of how we value players more than transfers, where it's probably more immediate impact.
Yeah. And I will say that in 2022, which is the first year we did rankings, I think Toby O was our consensus 101.
I think I was
2 through 5 was ridiculous.
I think 2022, I probably would have put Toby as my number one as well. So you guys are right on there.
We're smart. But I have the second overall pick, and if I would have the first overall pick, I seem to be the outlier here because I wouldn't have taken Gus Hawkins. I would have taken Caden Massey. And the main reason I say this is because I think the upside on Caden Massey is ridiculous. And Connor and I had this discussion before where like the ceiling of both of these guys is Gus Hawkins is a like surefire first round pick if he reaches his ceiling. Caden Massey to me is a certified like top 10 pick if he gets his ceiling. Like you do not find athletes at his size that work the same way that he does. And yes, he is coming from a smaller school, and yes, he's going to need time to marinate. But at the same time, you do not find athletes like him. And that's kind of why I prefer him at left tackle, just because of the athleticism. I think his backwards movement is probably a little better. He's a slightly bit more explosive. And I trust Connor Riley a lot with the development of Caden Massey. So Caden Massey was my 101 all the way. So I ran up to the proverbial podium here.
He was my two. Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just saying he was my two as well. I just feel like you can't go wrong with either of the two tackles. So any order that I think that you could have put them in, that this is probably a consensus 1-2. And I will say too, like Caden Massey also looked really good at the camp last night, and they're both at 290 pounds. So I think that they're both really going to be contributors probably sooner than we anticipated even last year at this time.
Yeah. I mean, Connor interviewed Caden Massey, and he was a great dude.
Yeah, I did. He's the only recruit that I've ever spoken to. And it was just because he happened to be close to Topeka, and I happened to have nothing to do that night, and it was the middle of the summer. So the stars just aligned, and I was like, I'll just drive down and see if they stop me. They didn't. And he was super awesome guy. And I was like, yeah, this guy's he's going to be successful. And I can see why we wanted him as badly as we did. And yeah, I think the only thing that's really stopping him right now from being as good as Gus is probably just competition level, I think, is probably a lot of it. But in terms of potential, they're pretty close together. Gus is just my 101 because I've been with him since the beginning. So he's always kind of been the guy I've been riding with in this recruiting class. So I guess it's just a loyalty factor there. But Caden is also really, really, really good.
Yeah, like I've been pounding the table kind of for both of them, but Gus obviously just for longer since he was committed longer. Like I thought that Gus should have been a 4-star the day that he committed. So to see how far he shot up was fun. And I think that Caden probably should have been a consensus 4-star as well, but you know, what are you gonna do? he was right on the doorstep, so
yeah.
You can't go wrong with either of these, though.
Yeah, and I have a feeling I know who Connor is going to pick at 3 because I think there's a pretty significant, no disrespect to anyone else on the list, but I think there's like a tier at like the top 3 is like their own tier.
I would agree with that.
I'm going with Devon Rice here at 3.
I love that pick.
Yeah, he is somebody that I remember the moment that he was on the visit. I was like, okay, who is this guy? We already have John Price. Why are we even recruiting Devon Rice? And then I went and watched his film, and I was like, why is this guy a Hawaii commit? And in my mind at the time, my justification for really liking Devon Rice was he felt like hey, like we missed Dylan Edwards, so now we've got Devon Rice, so it's all good. But now we have both of them, and so that justification's gone. But I guess now you just get two really fast running backs, and I really, really like Devon Rice from his film, particularly at the level of competition he was at. So there's a ton to love about Devon Rice. He fits the mold that it seems that we really like. And the only thing that really kept him from being a bigger prospect was he was playing behind a Michigan commit, if I recall. And he was still averaging like 12 yards per carry or something absurd like that.
As you do.
Yeah. So I love Devon Rice. And that's an easy pick for me at 3.
Yeah, he was the number 3 guy on my board that I was hoping would slide into that second round because I've been a Devon Rice lover since he kind of popped up for us as well. And like you said, Connor, it's like why was he committed to Hawaii originally as soon as you flip on the tape? Because he can score every single time he touches the ball and kind of is that Dylan Edwards light. And I think that he was probably the freshman that was most likely to see the field. But now with Dylan Edwards in the fold and Joe Jackson already there and Devon Rice missed a lot of the spring, I don't know how likely that is anymore. But I think that he could be a major impact player.
Yeah, Devon Rice, I think in a lot of ways is sort of a really perfect complement for John Price. It's the Rice and Price connection where they both have a degree of twitch. I don't want to say that John Price doesn't have any like wiggle or bend. I don't want to spread that really annoying narrative that DJ Giddens had for like a years among really, really stupid people. But Price is a little bit more built, and Devon Rice, I think, has a lot more upside as like a pure twitch back, like a more like scat back, if you would. Is he that alone? No. He can do between the tackles running. He just needs to put on a little bit more weight. But in terms of like speed and pure athletic talent, he probably steps in and is right behind Dylan Edwards as the most physically gifted running back in the room.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. For the first pick of the second round, I think that I might surprise some people on who I go with here, but I'm going to go with Trey Davis. I just think that with his speed and he can do a little bit of everything once he touches the ball, kind of like a Devon Rice where he touches the ball like look out. And I think that he has a really high floor because I know that for at least this year and probably a little bit of next, that you'll see Dylan Edwards probably be the primary returner. But I think that if you could put Dylan Edwards and Trey Davis back there, I think that's when you kind of get the K-State special teams returning is back because you're going to have guys that are really explosive with the ball in their hands. And Trey Davis, explosive. He's amazing in track, 224 in the on 3 rankings. I just think that he is still a little bit on the skinnier side and on the smaller side, but I think that he can really do something special, and it comes from how explosive he is.
I really love that pick. I had him as number 4 on my board, so he went exactly where I thought he deserved to go. So completely agree with the pick. And yeah, his track speeds and stuff, that's one of the main reasons that I really like him. But also his on the field film, he's very versatile, and pretty much at every point in his huddle tape, he's the best athlete on the field. And he does share a lot with JSD as the other receiver in the class in terms of build. But I do think he's distinctive in his playmaking ability and just how explosive he is. But he's somebody that I agree I would like to see on returns. And originally it was going to be I wanted all true freshman kick return team with Devon Rice, but again now we have Dylan Edwards, and that's going to be necessary anymore. So, but no, love the Trey Davis pick there.
Yeah, I will say that I've, at least according to my board, again I think pretty much 4 through 10 is like its own tier, and I would not argue with anyone who places anyone up or down the tier. I actually had Trey Davis 2 spots below JSD. And I think it's just because you're splitting hairs between them, because I think Matthew Middleton has determined he has a type. He wants the playmakers. He wants to get the ball in their hand and just watch them go and watch them work. And it's a different change of pace from Thad Ward's recruiting, where we had that recruiting class of 4 different players. Wesley Watson is gone now, but he was, I don't want to say the worst of them, but the worst of them on the of that class anyway. And you had Jace Brown, who was the technique guy, Trey Spivey, who's your true X, and Andre Davis, who's your jump ball specialist. But now we just have a bunch of playmakers, and Trey Davis fits that mold perfectly. But with the second pick of the second round, I'm actually going to ignore what I have on the board here, and I'm going to take the quarterback. I'm going to take Blake Barnett with the second pick in the second round. And I think that Blake Barnett right now, outside of that week where we were all collectively crapping our pants because we thought he was going to decommit after the event, I think that Blake Barnett, because of how early he committed, has sort of fallen under the radar, because you have Avery Johnson, who's, if all things go well, he's going to be the starter for the next 2 or 3 years at K-State, and everyone's kind of focusing on that. Blake Barnett he's a guy, like, he's a legit dude. Like, he does not have Avery Johnson's speed. He does not have Avery Johnson's arm. Very few people do, but it's not as big a difference as people want, or as people would necessarily think. And I think where Barnett shines most is his playmaking instincts. He's the kind of guy that if you're in a rut as a team, he's more than capable of just pulling Houdini magic out of nowhere and then just suddenly getting things back on track. He's kind of like a spark plug. Whereas we're used to quarterbacks like Will Howard being spark plugs at time, but more being like steady. It's like Skyler was very similar in that way. Very steady player that, you would see flashes of occasionally, but it wasn't a spark plug. And that, to me, is the definition of Blake Barnett as a quarterback, is the spark plug for an offense.
Yeah, I've been a big Blake Barnett fan as well. I don't really have a whole lot to add because you kind of described him perfectly. The other thing that I would add was just how big of a competitor Blake Barnett is. And I mean, in the state title game, he scored on defense and on offense. So he's kind of a baller in that sense. And, it's funny when Coach Kleiman makes the jokes on signing day of, we thought about taking him on defense instead. But I really like him. I am a little upset that he ended up getting hurt in the state title game, because I think that this spring really would have done him a lot more wonders, but instead he only practiced a handful of times. But I'm excited to see how his trajectory goes over the course of the season, because I don't think that it's crazy to think that he could be the next starting quarterback after Avery Johnson.
I really like the pick. He was 5th on my board as well. So my board has gone in order so far. So I'm glad you guys are reinforcing my opinions. But I really like Blake Barnett as well. And I was going to bring up the competitiveness thing as well, but you already summarized it perfectly, I think. Drew, the only thing I'll add is there was at some point some video of him celebrating, I think, after the state title game, and his energy in that clip reminds me of like a closing pitcher, Tyson Neighbors. That's the sort of energy as a quarterback, which isn't common, I guess, for quarterbacks. Maybe it is, I'm not really sure, but like at least not for K-State QBs.
He kind of has psycho reliever energy, but in the best way.
Like Jack Wentworth punching himself in the face down in Arizona before he came in for that first outing. So I love the Blake pick there. So I guess that makes it my turn then.
Yep.
Well, I think this has been a really reasonably drafted draft so far. So I'm going to pull one maybe out of left field here, and I'm going to go with a guy that is technically a scholarship player, but isn't in, I think, the official database with Navarro Shunky. He's somebody I think is good enough to be a scholarship athlete, and we kind of got lucky in that we just don't have to designate him as a scholarship player, I think, because of his Native American heritage. So he gets a full ride otherwise for that. But he's like a million times state wrestling champion or something crazy like that. And he's really, really, really strong. And K-State has had a history of guys that are wrestlers at the high school level, prolific wrestlers that end up really being great contributors, the chief of which is Will Geary on the opposite side of the line. But I really like Navarro Shunkin. I remember really wanting him badly, thinking the ship had sailed, and then just out of nowhere, he committed without a catch signal. I was like, that's kind of weird. But so I'll take him at 6 here.
Yeah, Shunky, good enough to be a scholarship player, and getting him as a walk-on is still one of the wildest things that I can remember in recruiting. And just, you hit the nail on the head. He won state wrestling as an 8th grader and has won it since. So he super strong, built like a tank. Well, I think he's just a perfect guard. And like, I've kind of made a joke a little bit that you could maybe see an offensive line one year that it's all of the 2024 class, but like, it's more likely than not, I think.
I don't think it's a joke anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be a stretch, honestly, because there's enough guys in this class to really fill out a line. I mean, with the 4 scholarship plus pseudo scholarship Shunky. So like, there's like, I think that's a legitimate point.
Shunky just eats people. That's really all I got. Like, you watch his film, you watch his wrestling, he just eats people. And that's what you want as a guard, just that nasty, low center of gravity guy who knows how to use his body weight, but he just, it's really amazing that he's just not counted against the 85. He's just here.
He's here, and, I think that's the best thing to do is to find ways to get guys to not count. I mean, Walter Neal was like the perfect example of that for a really long time with the GI Bill. And now you get Navarro Shunky not counting against 85, even though he's going to be, I think, a major contributor as well. 3rd round, I think this is where the draft really starts to get interesting. And it really comes down to like, who is your guy? And I'm kind of hitching my wagon right now to Kyle Rockers. I just think that him coming in early has really helped him, and he's somebody that we've heard about that's kind of turned some heads since he came to K-State. And the strange thing with Rockers is that like, he is like truly a center. Like, he has been recruited to play center only, and will probably take over for Sam Hecht once Sam Hecht is done with his eligibility. And again, that's just one step closer to the 2024 offensive line class. Just everybody starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also really like Kyle Rockers. I remember when I first heard that he was being recruited specifically for center, it made me very happy that I could rest easily knowing that at least there will be one more scholarship center in my lifetime. And Kyle Rockers will be that guy. I really like him. He's super quality. He gets overshadowed literally and figuratively by Hawkins and Massey. Because those guys are just incredible prospects, which, it's not too shocking that the tackles are getting more attention than the interior guys. That's pretty common. But Rockers, from his film, he really stood out, which I think maybe some of that was level of comp. But I like Rockers a lot. And it was also, it really rocks my world when I learned that you say Rockers and not Rakers. So...
Yeah, that I can't lie. I'm not left like, when somebody tells me how to say somebody's name too often. But when I heard that it was Rockers, that really kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah, it's like this isn't a situation where you look at the letters in the name and pronounce them. It's pronounced differently. But yeah, Rockers is, like both of you said, he's a true like prototype center that you want coming out of high school. And I think that he's going to slot into that role really well. I wish I had more to say about him, but he's a center, and it's really hard to find stuff to say about centers. Unless they're really messing up.
He is super, super smart. Like I think I wrote when we did Recruit of the Week with him, he is like what Connor Riley like wants in an offensive lineman. Like if you could find the definition of Connor Riley offensive lineman, Kyle Rockers' face would show up.
Yeah. That's good because Connor Riley knows what he's doing. So and Drew, you said it best. I have second pick of third round, and this really is that, like you said, take your pick of which is your guy. I'm going to take the guy that I originally wanted with my previous pick before I picked Barnett, that I'm kind of happy you fell, and that's JSD. I'm taking Jocks Bradley Demps here, and I think that a lot of, and like I said, full disclosure, I have him a little bit ahead of Trey Davis. I just really wanted Barnett in that spot. But a lot of what I see with JSD is a little bit less in terms of return ability and a little bit more polish as a receiver at the moment. And I think that when it's all said and done, they will have comparable careers, but I think Trey Davis's role, especially now that returning has been basically shored up for the foreseeable future, I think Davis's role will probably end up being a little bit more backloaded, and JSD will kind of be a more steady receiver. But even then, I think the difference between Trey Davis and Jocks Bradley Demps is like really splitting hairs, where like if you put them in the same uniform on the exact same day, you could probably use them interchangeably. And I think that in a way that's sort of the archetype that Middleton has been looking for. And I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but yeah, I'm taking JSD here.
I just like that you guys also call him JSD because that's usually what I call him when I'm talking to people about him. I hate player comps because I think that it puts so much pressure on somebody. And it's like, this is like their ceiling. This isn't who they are now. But like I've said, JSD, he has a little Brandon Ayuk in him where you get him the ball and kind of just watch him work. And he's more of a technician in that way, instead of just being like the straight line speed guy. So I really like him as well. I really debated about picking Rockers or JSD, but I've made the joke last fall because of how many offensive linemen I went to see that I'm like an honorary K-State beef member because I saw almost every single offensive lineman that K-State was going after last year. So I think that the offensive line, I have a little bit of a bias towards them.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, big boys deserve love too.
Yeah, I love the JSD pick. That if I were in your spot, that's who I would have taken, I think, given the available board. And I also like it because you made my choice a lot easier because I was down to two guys for my pick. And so now with my pick, I'm going to go ahead and take John Price with this one. I remember when John Price committed initially, I thought his huddle film was absolutely nuts because there were a few times where he just made people he just embarrassed people multiple occasions. And to me, he kind of seems like the final form of what Brian Anderson wants in his main tailback, which is just a guy that seems to excel at everything but breakaway speed, because that's just not John Price's game. He's just not a breakaway speed guy, but he does a little bit of everything and he does it pretty well. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. He has really good feet. I think he's very agile in space. I think he hurled at least one guy in his tape. Which
is a flag in Kansas high school football, by the way.
But because Keisha's so smart and fun. But I really like John Price. And he's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit as of late because Devon Rice has entered the roster, and so has Dylan Edwards. But I still really like John Price a lot. And I feel like he's a pretty good value pick here for the tail end of the third round.
Yeah, I really like that description. John Price, is more like DJ Giddens than not, I think, at the high school level, where it feels like they have just similar play styles, can kind of do a lot of the same things. John Price, the bigger back, too. I'm really excited for him. And like you said, like he's kind of the final form of like, we can't have a 3-down back that's like 5'7", 5'8". It's like if you can add in Price and have Rice as like the spell back, I think that would work really well. Just the whole backfield in general, I think, is extremely fun at K-State right now.
Yeah, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier and I'm glad that you brought up the DJ Giddens comp, because like I made the joke earlier, I really don't want people to say that he's slow and has no moves. Like that was the narrative with DJ while Deuce was here, and it wasn't true back then. But yeah, I really like John Price. Plus his name, he has the same name as Captain Price, so there's a future Alleycat meme for you.
Oh, to start, this is where I really am intrigued to see where you guys go in the 4th round. Because I was looking at what I have right now, and it's just such a toss-up on guys. But I'm going to kind of maybe go a little bit off the rails, a little bit and off the radar, and I'm going to go with Deshaun Rich. I just have heard good things about him kind of since committing and signing that kind of makes me think that he's going to be a dude eventually. Super, super raw, but is very long, can kind of do a little bit of everything at corner. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a lesser version of Donovan McIntosh from 2023, where he's really, really long and was a camp guy. And they've figured out that a lot of their corners that they've had success with have came to camp and have kind of figured it out that way. So I think that I'm hitching my wagon to Deshaun Rich, because I think that he could be a future starter.
Yeah, Deshaun Rich, he was a guy I was hoping was going to slip to me here in the 4th round. So that's a really outstanding pick. I don't have a ton to add about him, just because there's not a lot to really say about him right now. Because yeah, like you said, he's a very, very raw player that needs a lot of time in the oven. But the traits are there. And if he puts it together, he could be a really good cornerback for K-State. So I won't linger on him too much, other than just I think that's a really, really solid pick.
Yeah, we don't do video versions of the show. At least we haven't for quite a while. But Drew saw my reaction as soon as Rich got picked. The reason why I really wanted Rich with my next pick was he screams prototype in terms of corner. And like you said, he is very similar to Donnie. And I will say that Donovan McIntosh he wasn't my number 1 DB last year. I think it was Knigel, wasn't it?
I think it was.
Yeah. But they were like in that same tier. And I think that whereas Donovan McIntosh he was a prototype build and had one really elite trait, and that's he knew how to work the sideline. And I think that Deshaun Rich is just prototype. He's probably maybe marginally more athletic than Donovan. It would be like a coin toss to see who would win a race between them, or who would be the combine warrior. But Rich screams like 2 or 3 years on the bench, and then suddenly like second team all Big 12. That's kind of just what he screams to me. But now we get to my pick, and since my pick was so graciously stolen by our lovely guest, I'll take another defensive player, which I kind of noticed that all the defensive players are in sequence back to back for me on the board. I'm going to end up going with Jake Stonebreaker, who I believe was he the first or second commit of the cycle?
I believe he was the second.
But I really like Stonebreaker, and the reason why I like Stonebreaker, and I know that there's been some discourse about Boone Morris versus Jake Stonebreaker, who is the better linebacker. I give the slight edge to Stonebreaker. And the main reason I say that is because a lot of Stonebreaker's game just kind of, he reminds me of someone who just does a little bit of everything and isn't going to like violently vomit on himself if he's asked to do one thing in particular, which in a 3-3 defense, that's kind of what you need at linebacker. I'm famously bad at projecting where the linebackers are going to play. I had Tobio Sansanmi as a will, so I'm not going to project where he plays, but if it were me, and it's not, I would have Jake Stonebreaker at will or Mike sort of rotating between the two, see where he fits more naturally. But I like Stonebreaker because to me, he seems like the safer, more consistent player, whereas Boone Morris, I think, probably has a higher ceiling than Stonebreaker. I just think that Stonebreaker right now steps onto the field and is the marginally better player. The difference is like honorable mention Big 12 and second team all Big 12, and that's the difference in ceilings for me.
The only thing that I'll add about Stonebreaker is kind of like Blake Barnett, he has that psycho reliever energy as well. So when you watch Jake Stonebreaker hit someone and get up, he will let you know about it. So I think that that's extremely fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love having guys like that on the roster because Jake Clifton kind of fell into that category, and since he's departing, we definitely need a psychopath in the linebacker room to just I don't know, enforce our will against other teams. But
well, Desmond/Donovan, was it Donovan or Desmond Jennings?
Brendan
Jennings. My bad. Yeah, he fit the mold of a psycho linebacker, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, but so that takes us to the end of the fourth round here, and I'm going to go with Callan Barta. The spot. Is it Callan or Colin? Do we know?
I think it is Callan.
Okay, so I'm rolling with Callan Barta. We've gotten to a point where it really is just like pick a guy that you just kind of like, and like particularly even more so than the last couple of rounds. I remember watching Callan Barta's film and being pleasantly surprised with what I was seeing. I found it to, I'll put it like this. I really underestimated Jack Fabris's film, and I'm not going to make the same mistake with Callan Barta for reasons I won't state. And I'm a big fan of Barta. I think he was a Nebraska commit at one point as well, and we pulled him away, so it's a nice recruiting win there. So it kind of stinks he's getting stuck all the way down here, but I don't really know what to project for him other than I know that he's going to be a safety, and I think he could be a solid player for us. I think for Jack Fabris back in the day, I said something along the lines of if he can have the Ross Elder career arc, then I'll be pretty pleased. And he's already exceeded that really by like playing more than once and like not being bad before his like senior year. And Callan Barta, if you can be like 3/4 Jack Fabris, I'll be pretty pleased, I think, with that pickup. But I think he's got some interesting traits, at least athletically.
He has really fun tape if you watch him at receiver. He played corner a lot in high school. So, I mean, you guys know this. The worst position to evaluate when you're watching somebody's huddle tape is corner because nobody throws at them, or the only plays that you see is like an interception. So it's really hard to kind of project where you think that Callan Barta can go. But he's somebody that I'm excited about too. I think that he can be the like free safety kind of role at K-State where he played corner in high school, now moving to free safety, gives him a little bit more room. Doesn't necessarily have to be like a world beater coverage wise. But I think that you're kind of seeing the mold now at K-State as moving from corner to free safety.
Which is, yeah, I mean, that's a pretty solid role. And I think that people are underrating Barta's speed because if you look at his huddle tape, even at receiver in Topeka high school football, he's pretty fast. Like I'm not going to say he's faster than you might think for the sake of not producing narratives, but he has that sort of second gear that you don't really see in a lot of of players. And I think that I don't know where I project him. Free safety is probably it's a toss-up for me between free and jack. I really like converted corners at jack safety because then again, he is 6'2", which isn't necessarily the ideal frame for a jack safety. Never mind. No one cares. But I really like Barda in terms of upside. Plus, he played receiver, so I think that he has potential as that like middle field patroller who like surprisingly has a lot of ball skills.
To start the 5th round, I'm going to go with Boone Morris. I just kind of for the same reason that Connor picked Callan Barda. Boone Morris has been somebody that I've been told like a million times by now is like Austin Romaine. And I was not a big believer on Austin Romaine.
Oh, don't worry, neither were we.
And then he showed up and played in every single game as a true freshman, besides like 1 or 2 when he was hurt. So I'm not making the same mistake, and I really like his tape. I mean, he had like 1 million tackles as a senior in high school, so can't really go wrong there. He has good instincts, can do a little bit of everything. Kind of your prototypical Mike linebacker, I think. So I think that he'll slot right in right away, and I think that going and learning from like Alec Marenko and learning from even Austin Romaine, who played a lot last year, will do a lot for Boone Morris. And he was an early enrollee, which helps as well.
Yeah. I love the Romaine comp because that is what that was just screaming at me from watching his tape. Standard really has a type with his Mike backers, and it's guys that just make tackles a lot. That's it.
What does he do?
He tackles, and that's it. But I really like Boone Morris in that vein. On the Austin Romaine comp, that's exactly what was going through my head the whole time. I was watching Boone Morris tape, which again, I had him down here 13th on my board. So again, maybe that says that I'm making the same mistake twice with doubting Austin Romaine, because he really just is like skinny Austin Romaine, I think. But I do like him, and I think if that's what we want from our Mike linebackers, then he's going to fit our system just fine.
Yeah. The only thing I can add is I swear to you, Austin Romaine started playing better when he put on a cowboy collar. But I get the cap off the high school recruiting, and that leaves Ryan Howard, who, if you look at, yes, it is the younger brother. I'm not calling him the little brother. He is not little. He's the younger brother of Will Howard. And to me, with Ryan Howard, a lot of it is tough projection, because if there's one thing that I know he can do, he is going to be freakishly strong. Like that's probably going to be most of his game, is he's going to be just this mauler that you see in the trenches and you're like, well, damn, I'm about to get my lunch packed. But to me, the biggest thing with Ryan Howard is, first off, I think it's hilarious how different him and Will look like coming out of high school. Seriously, look up Will Howard's commitment photo. But I just don't see where Ryan Howard slots into the line, because I think he's too tall to be a guard, and he's behind 2 of the best tackles that K-State has recruited in probably a couple decades. So it's kind of a tough luck. I will say that he wouldn't be last in every single show that we have done in the past for recruiting specials. Now, go back and look at the bottom of our recruiting boards, and you will see that the people at the bottom tend to have really successful careers really early for some reason. Yes, the Jacob Parrish take still haunts me to this day. But, yeah, I could see Ryan Howard being used as a really good run blocking specialist early that's going to be used on a lot of pin and pull where he's doing the pinning. But yeah, it's just kind of unlucky that he ends up at this position here.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Mason and I have talked about, where it's kind of wild that Lincoln Cure is the number 2 ranked player in the state, because in a lot of classes he would be number 1. Like there are classes where Ryan Howard would be somewhere in the middle, but just this class ended up being a lot more loaded at the high school level than I think people initially thought.
I don't really have a ton to add on Ryan Howard. Other than, I had him here at 14, and I feel bad putting him at 14 because I don't think that he is bad enough to be considered the unanimous worst player in a lot of classes. But that's just kind of how it shook out with this one, which I think we've covered pretty effectively at this point. But I would transition us into the transfers in JUCO portion of this, and so since I have the first pick, I'll keep it pretty simple. I'm taking Dylan Edwards with the first pick here. I spent maybe 2 seconds thinking about somebody else, and I decided that was a silly thing to do. So I'm rolling with Dylan Edwards here. I don't have much to add on that other than he's really fast and I like him.
Yeah, I mean, that might be the easiest pick of the entire draft, to be completely honest.
Yeah, lightning in a bottle. That's all I got. So, Drew, you have the second overall transfer pick here.
I thought I had the third pick, and then
oh yeah, you're right. Well, you get where the draft begins. Then I get Easton Kilty, which I know I'm making that sound like a consolation prize. It's not. He's probably going to be a second or first team All Big 12 left tackle this year. One of the biggest gems that K-State got out of the portal in this portal cycle. And I know that there seems to be a sort of stigma against FCS linemen. First off, why? But second, Easton Kilty fits everything that you really want in a left tackle. And I think that he's probably better than KT. In fact, I think that there's quite a gap between the two, where if Easton Kilty has a good season, I could see him sort of having I keep wanting to say Hauk, but it's not Hauk. It's the tackle who ended up getting drafted by Denver from North Dakota State, who didn't have his front 2 teeth.
Oh, yeah.
The Viking.
Yeah, the Viking, that guy. But yeah, that's sort of my projection for Easton Kilty is he ends up balling out at left tackle, but no one notices because he's left tackle and isn't doing anything bad. So I could see him easily being like a 4th or 3rd round pick and being just like the anchor of a line that is losing a lot in terms of experience.
Yeah, I think that there was probably a top 2 was probably consensus between all 3 of us. I really like Kilty. I think that he's going to be a future stud, future NFL guy as well. But I think that his future in the NFL is probably on the interior. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just he's probably a future guard at the NFL level. And I think that he can really take off this year with a lot more people watching. So he was a transfer ad that didn't really take us off guard because we knew about the visit, but kind of how quickly it came together was more of the surprise, I would say.
I really don't have anything to add with Easton Kilty. He's really, really good. He'll be the left tackle. I like him.
Well said.
Thanks, man.
So I kind of get where the draft starts right now, and I've debated back and forth with a few different guys and kind of wrestled it. I mean, I even had somebody written down on my notes that I was going to take him, and just went back and changed it to somebody else. But I'm going to go with Travis Bates. I just think that he has a very, very high ceiling after playing 1 season at Austin P and being an FCS all-freshman team from Phil Steele. I think that he fits perfectly in the 3-3-5 as a heavier defensive end and can really get to the quarterback. And he was probably the transfer that was the most talked about in the spring of, holy crap, like this guy is really, really good. So I think that he's somebody that can really surprise a lot of people this year.
Yeah, that's a really, really good pick. definitely caught me off guard a bit because I think he is someone that kind of has been flying under the radar a bit at large for the K-State fan base, because there's been like much bigger names than him that have been transferring in, like Dylan Edwards and Easton Kilty, Dante Cephas, and guys like that we're looking at saying this guy is immediately going to like be a starter and be really good. But Travis Bates hasn't really gotten those flowers. So that can be a pick that I think can catch people off guard. But like you said, he does have a high ceiling. He just didn't produce a lot because he was like a true freshman, I think, last year, a redshirt freshman maybe.
Yeah, he was a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, so he's still pretty young, and he has a lot of growing to do, but could be one of the next guys to just kind of catch people off guard on the defensive line for K-State.
Yeah, I look at Travis Bates and I kind of think of the anti-Nate Matlick, where Matlick was a very, very finesse pass rusher who impressed me with a lot of like his more nuanced, like sort of technique-based rushing game. No, Travis Bates just overpowers people. And that's sort of a better fit for a 3-3-5 end. So I'll take the trade for Matlick, and this is someone who adored Matlick all throughout his time at K-State. But I'll take that trade every day of the week just because the trade-off with Bates is he's a power rusher. He's going to push the pocket. And a lot of people will look at, oh, he's a defensive end. That means that he's like the lead person with getting sacks. Well, in a 3-3-5, his job is to make the quarterback uncomfortable because he's basically just another defensive tackle. And that's something that he will be very, very good at just by virtue of how strong he is. And so I will say that I did have a defensive lineman a little bit above Bates, but I'm not going to fight you on the Bates pick because what he brings to the defense is really important.
So I think that makes it my pick.
Your pick.
So I'm going to go with Malcolm Alcorn Crowder here.
Bring in the Mack truck.
Which he was a big JUCO ad early and then disappeared for a while, but he's come back into our lives stronger and smarter than ever. And I'm very happy that he's back because he, I think, was probably the missing piece with the defensive line because it seems like he's probably going to be playing mostly inside, but he, I think, did play a little bit, at least in like the 5-tech maybe, at the JUCO level. So we can move him around a little bit. I've heard he's put on some weight, and he kind of tore it up at JUCO. I think the On3 rankings had him as like the number 4 junior college prospect, if I recall. But Malcolm Alcorn Crowder on the defensive line, he is going to be an instant impact guy, I think. And I really like him. And I was very sad when we lost him, but that just led to an even greater we're so back when we got him back in the fold.
Yeah, he was actually who I had written down and then changed it. But Malcolm Alcorn Crowder, I mean, you hit it on the head. If you read on KSO, I have the camp thread and said in the camp thread that Alcorn Crowder's up to weighing 320 pounds and looks amazing. Like he looks like he could add another 10 to 15 and still look pretty skinny. So I'm excited to see where his body takes him. And if he can get up to speed and up to the playbook really quickly, and this is kind of why I had Travis Bates ahead of Alcorn Crowder, it's just that Bates has already gone through it and gone through the spring where Alcorn Crowder hasn't been able to practice yet. So I think that if he gets up to speed, though, I think that he can really make some noise this year.
Yeah, I'm here for the nicknames because we got Mack truck, we got Big Mac, we got a couple, and I imagine that there will be a lot more. But to me, he slots in with obviously a position of need at nose tackle because I think you can get away with 3 scholarship nose tackles. It's difficult, and I don't recommend it, but it can happen. But I think that Malcolm Alcorn Crowder almost certainly steps in and is like he just shows up on campus as nose tackle 3, pushing for 2 between him and Alio or Ilalio. I always struggled with his name. But I think that for the future, this pickup is really important as well, because Asher, I'm not even going to try. Asher is like, he was always going to be a developmental nose guy because he played guard in high school, which is also why I think we rated him so lowly in that recruiting class, was because
we literally couldn't evaluate him.
We could not
didn't know
him.
if he would like ever. I think he had like one clip, and he deleted all of his huddle film too when we went to evaluate him. So we just had the little videos that K-State puts with the signees. So there's like 4 clips of him in existence on the internet. It's like, well, we're gonna try our best, man, but you're probably gonna be dead last. But and one more nickname for Malcolm Alcorn Crowder. He's from Massachusetts, so we can call him Malcolm Alcorn Chowder as well.
Ooh, I like it.
That's good. That's good. All right, so Connor, it's coming back around to you.
I just took Mac.
Oh wait, my fault.
I mean, I'll take another pick.
No.
I think it's your turn, man.
Yeah, it's the trade back. Yeah, sorry, I messed up. But to me, this next pick, whereas you had the all the defensive guys looped up with high school, I think, yeah, mine pretty much alternates. So I'm going to take another defensive player, and that's going to be not Travis Bates, Jordan Riley. My bad. I don't know why they are not the same person. I'm going to take Jordan Riley, and the reason why is because K-State had a need at leadership safety. I think is probably the best way to put it, is like the communicator. Because Kobe Savage, I know that name is taboo in some circles in K-State now, but Kobe Savage was the communicator in a lot of the 3-3-5 looks in the defensive backfield. Does that mean that he was the most talented safety on the field at all times? No, I think Daniel Cobbs was probably a little bit better than him in terms of a raw prospect, but K-State needed a defensive leader. And to me, that's sort of what Jordan Riley brings. And that's not me saying that he's an Eric Munoz where he's just a culture ad. No, he's a legitimately good player as well, who probably had his best game at Ball State up against the best competition, up against, I think it was Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Am I thinking of Bates? Yeah. Now I understand why, but no, I don't. But to me, Riley fits that sort of strong safety mold that K-State really has been looking for. And that safety room is quietly like really loaded with Siegel at Jack, anyone from VJ, Cobbs, maybe even Jack Fabris a little bit at free safety. Strong safety was the only one where you look at and you're like, I could see a few people vying for that position. And then Jordan Riley just came in and took it. And to me, that's worth a lot on a defense that is losing a lot in terms of communication.
Yeah, I really like Jordan Riley. I was hoping that he would slip to me at pick 6, but what are you going to do? I've been kind of on the bandwagon for him since he committed and signed as well. I just think that he fits what K-State wants to do so well. And I think that he's going to be another K-State transfer in the secondary that ends up being a really, 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 really productive player.
We have had such a good run of transfer safeties in particular, particularly guys that are like grad transfer 1-year guys. It seems like we just once per class just take like an instant impact starter transfer safety that just steps in and is immediately one of the better players on the defense. And I think Jordan Riley is going to be that guy this year. I really, really liked Jordan Riley. There were a lot of guys in the middle of this transfer class that were very difficult to order, to the point where there really wasn't much of an order. It was just kind of, I needed to put a name down and next to a number. But that's a really good pick.
Yeah, so I'll conclude the second round with probably the biggest name that's still out there, with Dante Cephas. I just think that I don't have him as high as some other guys, just because I think that we're going to see Jace Brown kind of do his thing and really break out and have a really big season. I think that Keegan Johnson, if he stays healthy, could have a pretty big season, and Garrett Oakley has been kind of on the cusp. So Dante Cephas, despite committing and being a pretty highly rated transfer, is kind of like that forgotten guy as a playmaker, but I'm excited to see where he goes and where he fits. And I know how motivated he is after not having the season that he wanted at Penn State. Now he's back with Matthew Middleton, and I think that he could be a very reliable guy at wide receiver this year.
Here, you go first.
Reliability is the big thing with me and Dante Cephas. In last year, with a lot of really inconsistent wide receiver play from everyone not named Jace Brown in the second half of the season, even your steady Eddie guys like Phillip Brooks last year had their moments of, I think the silence is enough to sort of sell the moment there. But to me, Dante Cephas strikes me as sort of the experienced glue guy that does a little bit of everything. To me, he is, if you want to look at the end game of what a Matthew Middleton receiver can be, look at Dante Cephas, because he's a surprisingly good technician. If you look back at his Kent State film, the way that he sets up DBs to fail at pretty much all times is it's not very common that you see it in the college level. You see a lot of college receivers just kind of win by out-athleting the other guy, which led to Connor and I dubbing the term Sunbelt receiver. But he's a true technician, and I don't want to undersell his athletic upside because he is a legitimately good athlete. But his thing is he just gets open because he knows how to manipulate defenses probably better than most K-State receivers we've seen in the last maybe ever.
Yeah, Cephas, I do like the perspective that he is kind of really the main thing that's going to hold him back this year is going to be the successes of other guys because Jace Brown is due for a breakout. You're speaking my language with Garrett Oakley. I've been on that hype train for a really long time. And then, of course, you're going to have Giddens and you're going to have Edwards and you're going to have Keegan Johnson and a plethora of other guys. You know, there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and that's only in the passing game. We'll still have the rushing game to deal with. So that's going to be the main thing that holds Cephas back is just the amount of guys on this team that need touches. But I still think that, like you said, Ace, that Cephas really can break out and be a big part of this offense, particularly given the motivation to show that when he has a QB that isn't Drew Aller, that he can really be a big contributor in a power conference. And then, of course, back with Matthew Middleton as well. So he'll have that going for him too.
Watching Drew Aller work in an Andy Kotelnicki offense is going to prove a lot of people wrong, and it's going to be hilarious. Not because of Drew Aller, it's because of Andy Kotelnicki. I just wanted to be clear about that.
All right, so I think that takes us to the third round here. I'm going to take what I feel like should be the unanimous best player available with Alec Marenko. He's going to step in and be the starting Mike backer. I really like him. He has tons of experience. Was it New Mexico State or New Mexico?
New Mexico.
Okay, so he wasn't with Jerry Kill, so that takes him down a little bit. But I do really like Marenko, and we kind of had it seemed like we kind of had our choice between two linebackers, and it seems that we got the guy that we wanted. And I like Marenko a lot because we're getting somebody with a lot of experience. Sure, it's a 1-year rental deal, but I like that because we have some, I think, quality guys waiting in the wings. Austin Romaine got a ton of playing time last year. Probably shouldn't have had as much as he did. But I think for being a true freshman that we didn't really expect anything out of, I think he did about as well as we could have expected, if we're being fair, that is. But I like Marenko. I think he'll be a steady presence for us this year. We don't need like an earth-shattering talent at middle linebacker. We need a guy to clean up some messes, and I think Marenko can be that.
Yeah, Marenko, kind of like Boone Morris, is kind of like your prototypical Mike linebacker, just makes a ton of tackles, super steady. I will say last night at the K-State camp on Thursday, again, was the first time that I got to see Alec Marenko. And the first thing that I said when I kind of walked away from seeing him and just kind of walking past him, sizing him up, seeing how he acts, I said that's a grown ass man. Like that's a guy that's in his final year of college and is very businesslike and ready to hit the ground running and kind of prove what he can do at the power forward level. Because I mean, that's another dude with a chip on his shoulder coming from New Mexico, and he was a guy that was in the portal for a really long time. And then K-State comes in and beats out Arizona. It was kind of just like a ho-hum, not really celebrated recruiting win, but I think it was probably a better recruiting win than a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah. I really don't have anything to add. I really like Alec Marenko. He's probably stepping in as the immediate starting middle linebacker, and he does everything pretty well, especially I think he's probably the most fluid of, well, that's not true. Jay Clifton exists. He is the most fluid of the K-State linebackers of the past few years, I will say, in terms of middle linebacker. But I guess that leaves me with the next pick, and I'm going to go with Flash here, honestly. I'm going to go with the flashy pick, and that's put on the straps. It's strapped Dante Thomas. All you need to know is his first highlight on his huddle film is him basically killing someone. That tells you everything you need to know about Dante Thomas. This is the third psycho relief pitcher energy poll that we're going to have. Thomas seems like the kind of guy that he worries his teammates. he scares everyone, and that's, as a strong safety who's probably going to end up being the enforcer, just coming downhill. Yes, please, thank you. And the reason why I didn't take him higher than this is because coming out of JUCO, I think that there's a reason I call him the flashy player, because a lot of his play seems like very highlighty, where he's going to be like, he's either going to kill someone or he's going to end up 10 yards behind them while they score a touchdown. That's just what he is right now. I see him like projecting out further, but I'm kind of prioritizing instant impact right now for transfers. So it's no disrespect to Dante Thomas. Please don't find me and hit me. I might explode. But yeah, it's the, like, seriously, just enforcer safety is sort of what he reminds it. That's not what he reminds me of. That's what he is.
Yeah. I like the enforcer moniker with Strap Thomas. I think that is what we need in the secondary. We need a guy that is just going to make a big hit and have a ton of personality about it. Because, I mean, Reggie Stubblefield, like, when he get a big hitter, a big tackle, like, that was like that was like an X Factor ability. It gave everybody a morale boost on the defense. Like that gets the crowd amped up. We need somebody that has that sort of presence on the defensive side of the ball. We've seen guys that can have it at times. Like TJ Smith kind of had it for a while. Kobe Savage had it at times as well, because he had a lot of energy. But Strap Thomas, I think, can be that next guy. Maybe a rotational safety that, we either decide we really like him downhill or we really like him in like third and forever or something like that. Like, just to get him on the field early and let him hit some people. But I really like that pick there.
Yeah, if someone crosses the middle, they're going to go meet God.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really have anything to add about Strap, because holy crapoly, did he destroy that one kid that was in that. But like, I remember watching that first clip, because to be like completely frank, like, I had no idea who Dante Thomas was when he committed. So I turned on the first clip, I watched the very first play and said, that's enough. Because that's all you need to know. I kind of like him as the psycho guy that's on like kick coverage. Like, you need one of those per team. Just have him go full speed and just destroy somebody on kick coverage. So my third round pick, I just kind of want to be different, because I know at least at Ace had this guy last because he did it on Impact. But I would go with Taquan Roberson. I made the joke when he committed on the video with Mason that he is the guy that I want to see play in every game because that means K-State's up by like 40.
Yeah.
I just think that it's something that kind of went under the radar of how impressive it is to take a starter from another school and convince them to be a backup and like do that over starting jobs at the G5 level because he had starting jobs at the G5 level if he really wanted them. So I think that he's going to be kind of an underappreciated guy when it's all said and done because in an ideal world, you only see him in mop-up duty. And I don't want him to be last because, you know, he's kind of the forgotten man in all this.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Okay.
I mean, he's backup quarterback, and I don't want to, slight his game because he's still like you were right. He is turning down legitimate G5 offers to be a starting quarterback. I don't think he would have been a particularly bad G5 starting quarterback. I think he would probably been top third of G5 starting quarterbacks. Last year he was hurt and also played in the UConn offense, it is hilarious that they ran flex mode once, and I witnessed it, but it wasn't exactly the elite situation that you look for in a quarterback. But I mean, to me, he's the insurance policy, so that we're not throwing out Jacob Knuth or random walk-on senior from Washburn to go Bods.
Yeah, I really like Taquan Roberson. I'm surprised he didn't get more traction just because of his last name, being a Roberson quarterback. I figured at minimum there would be a lot of K-State fans saying, "Oh, that's funny," like not necessarily being like, "Wow, we're so excited we got this backup quarterback."
L's boy.
Yeah, L's boy. But I mean, he's a former 4-star high school recruit that played at Penn State. I remember watching him relieve Sean Clifford in their Iowa game several years ago, which he really got the short end of the stick with that. And he ends up at UConn and was like I think he threw for 2,000 yards and 12 touchdowns last year. So he was fine. I mean, he did about as well as you can expect in UConn's offense. And so, I mean, like, if you want to go out and get as much of an instant impact backup quarterback as you can get, I don't think we can do much better realistically than Taquan Roberson. So I'm pretty happy with the pickup, and I think that's a good pick as well. But that takes us to the fourth and I believe final round, if I have my numbers correct. But I'm going to go ahead and take a guy that just committed today, and that's Jordan Dunbar, the transfer from Rice. Yeah, I know very little, if anything, about him other than I know that he was all Conference USA at one point, all freshman Conference USA. And missed, I think, most, if not all of last year with an injury. And I think in 2022, he had like 20 pass breakups or something like that. And so I don't have immediately high expectations for him, but he's somebody that maybe with a year development, he could come on the field every once in a while to relieve a guy. And I wouldn't feel uncomfortable with it. And, maybe he's also at this point, we're nearly filled up on scholarships. So we're just kind of taking a flyer there. This is a guy that was injured last year. If he bounces back and is what they thought he could be, then that's great because then we found a diamond in the rough. But if not, there's not a ton of loss there for K-State. Yeah,
I don't have much to say about him. He kind of reminds me of Roberson in the ascent that he's an insurance policy in case things go really, really wrong in the cornerback room.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really know a ton about Jordan Dunbar, but it seems like everything that you kind of see about him has been positive. So I'm excited to see how he kind of comes along this year as probably corner number 3, 4. And I think that he's somebody that's even good enough to potentially kind of get up there and really push to be corner number 2 as well.
Drew has confirmed that it is no longer Darrell Jones season. Millions are mourning. But I have the last pick, and Drew, you get the first of 3 superlatives, which is going to be your guy that ends up getting drafted the highest, and guy that ends up getting remembered for one play. And I'll give you the pick of which one you take.
Oh boy.
But I get the last one, and it's Caden McMahon, the transfer linebacker from Tyler Junior College, who right now, this is a situation where I'm shrugging my shoulders, and because I don't know what he's going to play. He's in a hybrid position. Like he's a hybrid size right now to where he could slim down and be a big safety, or he could bulk up and be a reasonably normal sized linebacker. If I had to guess, he's probably going to end up playing Sam linebacker, but then the Sam linebacker room confuses me because it's like 12 different archetypes in one room, because you have a man who has like 88,000 inch arms in Rex Van Wy. And then you just have relatively small hybrid players like Des Purnell and now Caden McMahon. With me, the problem with Caden McMahon is, first off, he reminds me a lot of Wayne Jones in that he's a hybrid guy who doesn't have an obvious spot. So I just worry about what happened to Wayne Jones happening to him. But I also think that he has a bit more of a defined skill set than Wayne Jones, other than guy who's really okay at kick coverage because he's the perfect size for that and that alone. But yeah, I just don't know what to do with Caden McMahon.
The only thing I really know about Caden McMahon is I think that Iowa State wanted him as well. And my pretty much the only point I've been able to make about Caden McMahon, and this is after watching his film as well, is that Iowa State is really good at identifying defensive talent. So if they wanted him, it's probably good that we got him. I don't have a ton to say about him, honestly, because I'm in a similar boat as you. I think he'll end up being a linebacker, whether that be a Sam or a Will. I don't think he'll be a Mike. But he, at the very least, is very interesting. But I just think he's kind of far away from really doing anything.
Yeah, he's somebody that he has a red shirt available, and I wouldn't be surprised if a red shirt gets used this year and kind of bulks up and kind of figures out future position.
So you get the first of superlatives. So which superlative are you going to go with?
I'm going to go with my guy, and I don't know if this will surprise anybody because he was my 101, but I think it's got to be Gus Hawkins. I've been on the Gus Hawkins train since he committed. I mean, I thought that he was a 4-star then he ends up being the number 52 overall player. So just really excited about where Gus is going to go and to kind of see where he goes along. And I think that he could be a potential 4-year starter even.
Yeah. I'm going to go with my guy being Navarro Shunky, because I think people are going to say like, oh, like he's a walk-on. No, that's where you're wrong. In a technical sense, yes. But I mean, you don't, in a very similar way to Caden Massey, people like Navarro Shunky don't just walk through the door very often. So the other guy I was considering here was Sashawn Rich, because a lot of it is projection with him, but I think it's the good kind of projection where you're not like, what is he going to do? But you're like, oh, damn, that's what he's going to do if he develops. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
My guy's Devon Rice. Here, from the moment that I saw his film, I absolutely loved him. I would have taken Gus Hawkins if he had been available, because I, like you, have loved him from the beginning. But Devon Rice, I think even still is not as heralded as he should be among K-State fans. And he's going to be another guy where people are going to look at him here in a couple of years and be like, where'd this guy come from? Like how is he so good? How did he just go under people's radar? And it's just going to be another one of those diamond in the rough K-State finds when he really shouldn't be a diamond in the rough. He's just that talented. It's not like they're coaching him to like be this fast. Like he is this fast. Like,
can't coach speed. But Connor, you get the next pick of either guy who gets remembered for one play or guy that gets drafted the highest?
Guy that gets drafted the highest. I think I'm going to roll with that. I'm going to say Hawkins. But for me, it's a coin flip between him and one other guy. I'll leave the name for one of you to say. But Hawkins is, I really, really like him as a prospect. I agree with Drew in that I think he could be. I think he's good enough to be a 4-year starter. Will he be? That's really the only question that remains. But I mean, he does have the potential to go down as one of the best K-State linemen ever. And K-State's had a lot of really good offensive linemen as well. It's not like the tight end position where it's Ben Sinnott and like everybody else, Jerry Mastrud, I guess. But it's Gus Hawkins. I'm a huge fan of his. And I think that he does have first-round pick potential, and the sky's the limit for him.
Drew, you get next.
I want to be different because I've kind of just been pounding the table for the offensive line guys the entire time. And just to be different, and because of his position and how I kind of saw him last night, I would say Malcolm Gratter, because if he's at that 320 and can still be super athletic, I think that there's no reason why a guy like him couldn't go in the first or the second round, because guys at his size don't move like that super often. I mean, we saw Texas almost had 2 first-round defensive tackles this past year.
And Gilly faced both of them.
So if you can get a guy like that, I think that NFL teams will kind of fall in love with his size and how he moves.
I'm going to send you a card for keeping Caden Massey on the board. And I've already explained why. But
I wanted to be different.
Yeah. I get the last one, which is guy who will be remembered for one play. I alluded to it earlier, but some poor bastard is going to go over the middle when Dante Thomas is patrolling there and die. So that my pick is Dante Thomas.
Me or Drew here?
Let's go Drew. Keep it consistent.
So I think mine. Oh man. I think that I'm going to go with Devon Rice, because I think that there could be a time at some point in his career where K-State probably needs a big play, and he provides it.
I'm rolling with John Price here with a hurdle touchdown.
Ooh, I like that.
That's a good one. But that concludes the draft, the first part of the Alleycats anniversary special, which we're going to either do 2 or 3 episodes this next week. We're not sure which will end up being the number yet. But first off, thank you, Drew, for coming on to the show. By all means, plug anything and everything that you wish to.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. It's been a really fun time, and it was like the perfect time of the day to really kind of knock this out for all of us. So make sure to subscribe to KSO. The board is a lot of fun right now with just basketball recruiting, football recruiting, and just all kinds of info. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just K-State Online, and you'll see mine and Mason's face on the YouTube. And I think that about covers it for me.
Yeah, I thank you again for joining us on this episode, but thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdwards00.
I am at Connor Baltazar, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out both the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store and the official Aggieville Alleycats supporters link, both in our podcast and Twitter bios. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.